Hello everyone, this is Ed Denzel, host of Unfound. I wonder if you will consider becoming a supporter of this YouTube channel. By pressing the join button below, you can receive, for just 10 cents a day, the video version of the podcast a day early, the Unfound Now episodes a week early, daily video updates from yours truly, and cool emojis to use during the Monday night live show. Please consider it as you watch the following spectacular video. Thanks. Kyle Richard Fleischmann was a 24-year-old from Charlotte, North Carolina. He was a popular guy who chose a career in business. In the early morning hours of November 9th, 2007, after going to a show and a bar, Kyle was alone in the uptown part of Charlotte. He tried calling several people, seemingly to pick him up, but Kyle left no messages. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. There is safety in numbers. If you're wondering where that saying originated, it comes from the Latin phrase defendit numerus and first entered the English language in the 1500s. This is a phrase that can be used for both offensive and defensive plans. Far easier to attack one person if you are part of a group. Likewise, far easier to protect yourself against an attack if you are part of a group. I'm talking about this because we've covered many disappearances where the missing person was part of a group that day or night. That person then split off and went missing, while the rest of the friends or group did not. To name just a few Unfound has covered: Jesse Ross. He was with a group of college students, then left a convention room without explanation. Travis Robertson. He was out with friends in Fayetteville, Arkansas, then walked away. Brian Schaefer. Hey, everyone by this time knows what happened there. And if you'd like a female version of this, Andrea Knabel. She was around her sister and others late at night, then somehow disappeared. My perception is that with all disappearances of this type, the foul play angle seems to be a popular choice, even though there are usually no facts to support it. Well, with the disappearance of Kyle Fleischmann, his Thursday night started off on the right foot with friends and family. But by the end of it, he was alone. What happened after they decided to go separate ways? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linus' website, charleyproject.org. Kyle Fleischmann was not a guy who seemed to have it all. He did have it all. A great education, an excellent family, friends who cared about him. Kyle lived in one of the growing hotbeds of business and innovation at the time, Charlotte, North Carolina. And on top of everything else, to quote Derek Zoolander, he was really, really good looking. Yeah, I know. Disgusting. And from all accounts, Kyle was sensible and modest about all of it. He was just a guy living his life. No vices, no addictions. He was single, so no relationship issues. Nothing that caused anyone to be concerned about him. So, on November 8th, 2007, Kyle went with friends and family to a comedy show in Charlotte. After that, some of them went to the Buckhead Saloon, a place Kyle and the others visited before. After midnight, the rest of the group decided to leave, but Kyle stayed, saying he would get a taxi home. It was after this, though, that Kyle ran into a problem by dancing with some other guy's girlfriend. Words were exchanged, but no punches were thrown. At around 2:10 a.m., Kyle left the saloon and walked down to Fuel Pizza. At this time, instead of calling a taxi like he said he would do, Kyle attempted to call people he knew, seemingly to pick him up. Yet he left no messages. The calls stopped at around 3:25 a.m. Kyle was never seen again. When Kyle didn't show up for work later that day, the search for him started. But nothing of Kyle's was found, except his coat and ATM card, which he left at the Buckhead Saloon. A fact that still puzzles many people to this day. Over the past 15 years, many rumors have swirled concerning Kyle's disappearance. Did he run into a gang while trying to walk home? Is Kyle buried in the foundation of a complex that was being built not far from where his phone last pinged? Was Kyle murdered by the boyfriend of the dance partner? Try to put that all to the side as you try to answer these three questions during the interview. Number 1, why did Kyle tell his friends he'd get a taxi when we know from phone records that he never attempted to do so? Number 2, if Kyle was in his right mind, why would he leave his coat and ATM card at the saloon, especially since he would have needed both on that cold November night? And number 3, if foul play is not an element of Kyle's disappearance, how do we account for him not being found, especially since the nearest river or large lake are not close? Kyle's family, from news accounts, seems to believe foul play is the best choice for his disappearance. The guest for this episode is a Fleischmann disappearance expert, Reggie Simpson Ahern. Unfound News. I remind all of you again, for maybe the 10th time, that the YouTube show Unfound Live is now a podcast with its own feed. Please find it on your podcast app and subscribe. Next, the newest Unfound Now is available to the public on YouTube. It is a 50-minute video on the July 2022 disappearance of Gregory Peterson from Cloverdale, California. He allegedly got called out to help a friend who had broken down. Greg's car was eventually found on the side of the 101 on fire. What happened? And where is Greg? Finally, thank you for all of the 6th anniversary wishes. I will say it again. Nobody is more surprised that Unfound got to this point than I am. Once again, thank you.
Where you can find Unfound on these following podcast platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and many others, especially outside the United States. The new podcast, Unfound Live, which comes out on Tuesdays, can also be found on these platforms. Social media sites: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the newest one, TikTok. Listener support sites: patreon.com/unfound podcast, paypal.me/unfound podcast. The website, theunfoundpodcast.com. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound an independent researcher and investigator for the disappearance of Kyle Fleischmann, Reggie Simpson Ahern. Reggie, welcome to Unfound.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Listeners should know that I've been coordinating, talking to, sharing information with Reggie for a couple months now. And eventually we
hmm
will get into how it came to be that I got interested in Kyle Fleischmann's disappearance in the first place. But Reggie, being that you are not a family member, uh, why don't you just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself as much as you would like? I don't know what if you have a job, a career, anything. You do not have to say that if you do or don't. It's up to you. What would you like the listeners to know about yourself?
I'm 31. I was born in North Carolina, about an hour north of Charlotte, which is where Kyle went missing. I attended the College of UNCC, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And then when I graduated, I moved to Washington, D.C. to work on Capitol Hill. And
Oh.
just last year, I moved back to Charlotte with my husband. So
hmm
back close to where the case happened.
hmm Okay. And would you say that you've always been interested in disappearances or mysteries, things like that? Or is this something maybe kind of new? What kind of history do you have in that area?
Yeah, I definitely have been interested in other disappearances, but I have never put the time and research into any disappearance at any length like I have this one. This one has definitely really captured my heart.
Okay. And once again, you do not have to reveal what you're doing with your life, your private life. I would not ask you to do that. But are there things in your life that kind of equate to looking into mysteries, or are you involved in something in your life that like is totally separate from this?
I'm really not. I mean, it's just totally been this case.
Okay.
So
Okay. Very good.
yeah,
All right. So that's your background. So you now live back. You say you were in Washington, D.C. for a while, but now you're back in North Carolina.
correct.
Right. And in the Charlotte area?
Yep, I'm right near uptown Charlotte.
Okay.
Here in Charlotte, we don't call it downtown. We don't have a downtown. Everyone
Okay.
here calls the city center uptown. So you'll definitely hear to that.
Okay.
So if I'm saying uptown, just assume I'm talking about the downtown, very urban area.
Okay, well then I sound like a stupid Floridian then. Okay, so what you're saying though is you are familiar with these areas where Kyle was the night he disappeared.
Very,
Very
yes.
familiar. Okay. Now granted, you just admitted your age there, 31 years old, and I can appreciate any woman that's going to admit her age. So going 15 years ago, you were only like what, 16, 17 when he went missing. Do you specifically remember when Kyle went missing? Did you see it on the news, on the internet? When did you become aware that Kyle was a missing person, and explain how that then led to you becoming an expert on his disappearance?
Yeah, I sure do remember where I was. And I was in high school. And I remember when I, kind of realized and figured out what was going on. Would have been like late 2007. I
Okay.
remember going into my living room. My mom was watching the local news, and they were showing a segment on Kyle, playing
hmm
video footage of him walking in uptown Charlotte, showing his last moments seen on video. So I remember it pretty vividly, and it's kind of stuck with me since then and always bothered me.
hmm Now, would you say over the years, of course, you've really, as the listeners will find out, you've really gotten into the deep depths of Kyle's disappearance. Are there any other disappearances from that area that have maybe caught your fancy or your interest besides Kyle's, or has it been Kyle's ever since then? How would you explain it?
I mean, I watch Investigation Discovery. I listen to podcasts. I'm definitely interested, but Absolutely not. This has been the only case that I have been devoted to and that I have put so much time and thought into. So
Okay. And how long, maybe your college years, maybe you're too busy to do that, but how long would you say that you've really been getting into it as deep as you have? How long have you been working on it?
So I would look it up every now and again and just see if there were any case updates. Now, after 14, nearly 15 years of progress that seems to be somewhat stalled, the past year, for honestly nonstop for the past year, I
Mhm.
have been really digging in and doing a huge deep dive into Kyle's disappearance. And it's really bothered me to see there's a lot of misleading information out there, a lot of articles that you will look up that are by major local news sources
Yeah,
completely contradict one another. So that's really made me curious and want to find out more and want to bump up these facts against one another to figure out what's fact, what's fiction here.
very good. Okay. So how does your friends and family feel about all of this? Of you being, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but very interested in all. It's very supportive, being that this isn't like what you do for a living, unlike what this is all I do. But how do they feel about your interest in Kyle's disappearance? Supportive?
They are supportive. I think my mom is very interested in everything that I'm finding out. I think I'm a lot more interested than everyone else. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if they have the bandwidth, um,
Mm-hmm.
but I am constantly talking about it. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that that is not gone unnoticed. But they're
Okay.
definitely supportive and they think it's really wonderful.
Okay. Very good. I'm glad you got that support. Excellent. Now, I have to ask, being that you've been working on this for a while, any reaching out to Kyle's family? How has that gone? Has that been a positive experience? Have they kind of blown you off? Because I will talk about my own experience here in a moment, but what about your experience?
Yeah, I have tried contacting Kyle's family. It does seem in recent years that they have started to steer clear of social media to an extent. At some point, I get that you have to move forward to the best of your ability, and I believe that's what the family's trying to do at this point. I know that they've experienced this massive grief for so long that's impacted probably every aspect of their life. So I understand. But yeah, I don't think they're very accessible at this point.
Yeah, that has been my experience too. And this is maybe where I admit, how this all happened is that must have been maybe late May or something like that. I had posted one of Unfound's episodes, as we always do on Fridays, to YouTube, and a listener whose name I recognize, who I think has been a follower of Unfound for at least a few years, asked me, Ed, have you ever looked into the disappearances of Justin Gaines and Kyle Fleischmann? And the reason I think those were combined is because they went missing around the same time, even though they were in different states. The circumstances are very similar. And so, just maybe 6 weeks ago, I did cover Justin Gaines's disappearance, having his mother interviewed his mother. And so then, in looking up Kyle Fleischmann's, I went to his page on Facebook, tried to reach out to his father, who usually does most, at least in the past, media contact. Didn't get anything. And I thought that I had quite a bit of supportive people on that page to try to get, an interview with him, and it was nothing. And then you and I happened to run into each other online, and that's how you eventually ended up on this episode. So it sounds to me like you had, even though you've been working on it for a lot longer and more in depth than I have, you've kind of had the same experience. Would you say that's what you encountered?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay, very good. So if listeners wondering how that all went down, this is how it went down. Now, before we get into this, as far as your work you've done, talking to any police, filing FOIAs, what are the extents that you've gone to collect this information?
Sure. So I think in a case like this, FOIA is going to be quite limited. I have spoken to CMPD. I do have the original police report that I requested, but to get internal records, I would have to hire an attorney to subpoena it.
Wow. Okay. So did you file an official FOIA? Is that how you got that paperwork, or some other way?
No, I just requested, I called, I spoke to them, I sent a few emails back and forth, and I was able to get just the original police report that Dan, Kyle's best friend, filed.
Okay, very good. Okay, and what other things would you say that you've done over the time? Have you spoken to any Kyle's friends? Once again, I just want to make sure before we get into this, because the listeners are going to hear you have a wealth of information going on in that head of yours. We're just wondering where it all came from. Who else have you talked to? What other kind of paperwork have you collected?
Sure. So I've tried reaching out to his friends as well. I've
Mhm.
tried reaching out to a lot of people connected with him, and I just haven't. And do think a lot of these situations is the messages go into that um, inbox that's not your regular inbox, so they kind
Mhm.
of get lost in the interwebs. But I
Yeah.
have done a lot as far as this case goes in my research. I've mapped different possible routes that Kyle took. I've mapped
Mhm.
like cell phone tower data and the dog trails. I've done
Yeah.
walkthroughs myself in person. I've
Wow.
done a lot of like pulling deeds and ownership history and kind of like tracking property sales, LLCs, and whatnot. I have done deep dives just on like what the initial search efforts they did included, and I've studied like the images and video footage that's available.
Yeah.
I have spoken with Charlotte journalists who covered the disappearance back in 2007 and the years following, and I've also had to like cross-reference a lot of the information from the family, from the press, and the CMPD, and like I said, bump it up against each other and see kind of what the outliers and false information is. I have spoken to the private investigator at length, who I'm just going to refer to often as the PI because it's
Okay.
easier.
Okay.
Uh, Kyle's family hired the PI in the immediate aftermath of his disappearance. He is a retired cop.
Okay. And maybe we can talk about that when we get to that point. We can talk about a little bit about your interaction with that person. Okay. And once again, if you don't want to use that person's name, it's always the choice of the guest whether any names get used or not. Okay. Thank you for all that. So this is Reggie's background. She's been working on this. Obviously, if she's walking the route, she's collecting deeds and property records and all these things. Obviously, this is not somebody who is just being a keyboard jockey. So let's move on to this. Now, of course, you did not know Kyle. I did not know Kyle. But what would you say that you have learned about Kyle, the person? Because, my opinion, after 264 disappearances, is mainly disappearances are about people. People fall into certain demographics, and you can kind of predict if they're going to disappear. These are the reasons. What can you say that you have discovered about Kyle's personality, interests, job, friends, relationships, as deep as you can go? What can you say about him?
So Kyle was 24 at the time of his disappearance. He'd be turning 39 actually later in September 24th. He was 6 foot tall guy, 180 pounds. He was athletic, muscular. He actually had his front teeth were veneers. He had obviously a phenomenal smile. He was, by all accounts, he was very good looking.
Mm-hmm.
He attended Elon University for college. He moved back after college. His parents and siblings are from Charlotte. They still lived in Charlotte. He was from Charlotte. He has a sister, Noelle, who he's really close with, and they're pretty close in age. And then he has a younger brother who is younger at the time, so he's not as involved when this disappearance happens. I know that Kyle was in an internship after graduating college, and then he got a job at Maxim. He was single at the time. He'd just gotten a car. He's just gotten a he just bought his first property, which was a condo. He lived there with two male roommates. His roommates were actually both professional soccer players.
Hmm.
And so Maxim, where he worked, it's a healthcare recruiting agency. It's in the South Park area of Charlotte, which is just south of Uptown.
Okay.
Uh, he he's by all accounts is described as being very positive, outgoing, and helpful. And I know he volunteered with kids in need.
Wow.
He was very close with his family. Him and his dad, Dick, went to lunch very often. Their offices were both very close to one another's, both in South Park. His mom, Barbara, had been diagnosed with cancer, and his reaction to her diagnosis was very upbeat. He told her, "We're going to beat this together." And she actually had her treatment planned in the days just right after his disappearance, which is pretty tough.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
he had a lot of friends too. So,
Yeah. Okay. Anything? I have to ask these questions once again. Everybody understands you did not know Kyle. Anything that came up in any of your work to show that he had any sort of vices or addictions, whether it has to do with chemicals or alcohol or even gambling, anything like that. Has any of that come up in any of all the work that you've done over these years? Anything like that come up?
no, he enjoyed himself, I feel, in a way that many young professional single males would do when they're fresh out of college. I do see a lot of signs that he was responsible and close with his family, even on the night that he disappeared. When he does go to this comedy show, which we'll get into,
Yeah.
after the comedy show, he goes to the bar with his friends. He calls his mom and invites her to come meet them at the bar that
Huh.
night.
That's unique. I don't think that I would have ever called my mother to join me. Not that I was ever a big bar hopper, but that would have been a real stretch. Okay. What about relationships? I don't know if he was straight, gay, I really don't care, but any intimate relationships in his life at that time?
I'm not really sure about his past relationships. I do know that in a few interviews, Dick used the wording of Kyle was single at the time. So that maybe insinuates that he previously was in relationships.
Hmm.
Dan does mention in several interviews that Kyle never had any difficulty with the women. So.
Okay. But as far as we know, at the time of his disappearance, he was a single guy, and in fact, he going to this comedy show. He did not take a date or anybody.
Correct. He was single, but I will say most of his male friends at this time were in relationships. His best friend Dan was actually married.
Okay,
Kyle
and
was his best
this
man.
okay, and this comedy show. This was for Dane Cook, which if you have a significant other, that seems like a good outing, a good time out on the town, and you'd think if he was in a relationship, that would be a good opportunity for them to go together. He did not take anybody, so that would then once again enforce the idea that he was not in any relationship at the time. Okay. Regarding where he lived at the time that he went missing, uh, did he live close to this area or did he live kind of out of town? How long would it have taken to drive from where he lived to the last area where he was seen, like this pizza place we're going to talk about, this theater where the comedy show was, the bar? How far are those distance is that distance?
It would have been from Kyle's home to the street, College Street, where that's where Buckhead Saloon, Fuel Pizza, all of that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2 hour walk, or it is a 15-minute drive.
Okay.
I could tell you a few more distances from Dan's house to Kyle's house, or Kyle's house to Dan's house.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 9-minute drive, and they both live south of Uptown. Kyle lives a bit more south than Dan.
Okay. So that'll be something to think about. We'll maybe get into that a little later. Okay. So on that day, on November 8th, 2007, which was a Thursday, do we know anything about what he did? Of course, we know about this comedy show that he eventually ended up going to. But anything about earlier in the day is just a regular day. He went to work and then had plans to go to the show. What do we know about earlier that day?
So I believe he went to work that day. I don't have proof. I've asked the PI and I've asked a few other people. It seems like he went to work that day, but I'm just going to leave that a little open-ended just in case.
Okay.
Before the Dane Cook comedy show, Kyle drove his car to Dan's house, which is in Dilworth. Like I said, it's a 9-minute drive from Kyle's.
Okay.
Kyle planned to, he had the plan to come pick up his car later that night after everything. Kyle and the friend group were all meeting at Dan's house so that they could share a cab uptown together. The plan was just to go uptown to grab food and drinks before they attended the comedy show. I do know they had difficulty finding a spot to eat and drink at before the show. Dan mentions in several interviews that the bars and restaurants were all very full and they had to walk place to place.
Okay. All right. So, and once again, just opinion here. So they're going out, they're seeing the show, even though this is a Thursday. So is the belief that Kyle would be working the next day? That he, and in fact, maybe that's the way everybody figured out that he was missing. Was the plan then that he was going to work the next day?
He was going to work the next day, and we know this because later when Dick, his father, was able to, I guess he went to his work, maybe collected his Kyle's belongings. Dick found a to-do list on Kyle's desk that said to-do list for Friday, and he had written out, several things that he wanted to accomplish that day at work.
Okay. One more thing before, of course, we get into maybe the rest of that night and what happened after that. Once again, in your research, anything, of course, we know that his mother was diagnosed with cancer. I should probably ask, did she recover from that? Was the treatment
Yep,
successful?
she did.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Anything else going on in Kyle's life that what we might call a stressor? Things that might have been causing him to be anxious, besides, of course, his mother being diagnosed with cancer, but anything else? Money issues, any stories that maybe had maybe having some bad thoughts in his head, maybe depressed, anything that has ever come up regarding any of that?
Absolutely nothing, and I have looked.
Okay, very good. All right, so they get this cab at Dan's. They go downtown, maybe have a problem, really busy, the place is really hopping, this area of town on that Thursday night. But eventually they do go to this comedy show, all of them. And how big is this group? And who exactly are these people that are in this group?
Sure. So the friend group that evening is Kyle, Dan, his best friend, Christina, who is Dan's wife, and they were already married in 2007. They were
Okay.
married and lived together. Their friend Dominic, who they called Dom, and his girlfriend.
Hmm.
Dom's home is actually right behind Dan's house on the next street. Kyle's mother and sister Noelle also attended the comedy show. They did not sit together. They didn't sit with Kyle. They sat separately, but they were there.
Okay, so this sounds like a group. Did they all fit in a cab or did they all take separate cabs? I mean, I know this
I've
is very technical.
wondered. Yeah, I've wondered the same. They might have had to take two cabs unless they got an SUV. I guess that could have worked. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and these are the days before Uber and Lyft, kind of. So, and we know
Hmm.
that there are minivan cabs out there, so maybe that's not
Yeah.
crazy. Okay, so they go there, they go to this show, they go to eat, they go to this show, and what happens after? They go to this bar, and what goes on?
So, just one thing I want to mention in
Please.
case anyone finds it interesting. It is at the Bobcats Arena, which is now the Spectrum Center. This is where the Charlotte Hornets play. And Kyle was a huge Dane Cook fan. It was his favorite comedian.
Hmm.
I do know that they are there on a Thursday night, like you mentioned, because they're using this comedy show as an excuse to celebrate Dan's wife Christina's birthday and also Dom's birthday because they're both within the following days. of Kyle's disappearance. I don't know if they're right after or right before, but their birthdays are essentially that week or right around then. For after the show, I know that Kyle and his friends leave the show and they walk the 5-minute walk to Buckhead Saloon. Buckhead Saloon is now closed. The bar turned into Fitzgerald's. I guess management just changed. And then Fitzgerald's also recently closed. I don't know if it was a COVID closure type thing, but
Yeah.
I've never even looked it up, but that's what I've thought in my mind for some reason. I have been to both Buckhead Saloon and Fitzgerald's under both ownerships. Very normal bar people go to. Dan did say in his interviews that they were not regulars at Buckhead Saloon. He actually said the only reason we went was because it was close. He said, I actually can't remember that we've ever been there before. He did mention that in a podcast interview that he did. I know that they get to the bar between 10 and 10:30, roughly. They're drinking, enjoying the night. A local band is playing at the bar. I don't know who. I see pictures that there's a band playing.
Okay.
They meet a group of people there at the bar that they have a mutual friend with. I know that Kyle starts chatting with a group of girls within this group where they have a mutual friend with. At one point, there is a mention from someone at the bar. I'm not sure who, but there's mention that there might be a after party at the Holiday Inn, which is right next door, like directly next door, to the right from Buckhead Saloon. Dan does later confirm that this party never pans out. Dan said that night Kyle was in a great mood and he was very sociable. The way he says it, in my opinion, makes it seem as if he was so happy, like maybe even happier than normal. Like he was just in an awesome mood.
Okay.
Maybe it was because he was seeing his favorite comedian. Don't know. Dan says Kyle was drinking beer and had taken a few shots, but he described Kyle when he was there at the bar as being moderately buzzed and nothing more.
Okay. So at this bar, and so I guess what we're saying here is Kyle's behavior maybe a little more joyful than usual, but not drinking more than usual or anything like that.
Right. Dan said it seemed like a very normal night. I mean, Kyle could hold his alcohol. Dan does mention in an interview, he says that there was only one time that he could ever remember. Granted, he went to college with Kyle. They've had many nights of drinking together.
Yeah.
And there's only one time he can ever remember Kyle being so inebriated that he didn't know where he was type thing. Like that was not ever common.
Okay. Now, there was this argument. I don't know if it got to the point of, people pushing and shoving and punches being thrown, but there was this argument. Once again, we realized you weren't there, I wasn't there. But what do we know about it? What have you been able to learn about, how this all started and where did it go from there?
So roughly between 1 and 2 o'clock, I know that Kyle dances and talks to a female who is there at the bar. Anyone can look up photos and video of this. She and Kyle are definitely leaning into one another, talking, smiling. In my opinion, the body language insinuates they're both engaged in the situation. It does not seem like an unwarranted or unwanted conversation by any means.
Okay.
Next, there does seem to be shortly thereafter a verbal altercation between Kyle and a male. I know the male has 1 or 2 male friends with him as well. One of the males is the boyfriend to this female that Kyle was dancing with. From this point on, just to make it easier, when I refer to this couple, the female he danced with and the male who had the slight altercation with, I will refer to them as the girlfriend and the boyfriend.
Okay.
Anyways, this happens inside the bar. It's around closing time. A few words do appear to be exchanged, and it's said from the take of the CMPD, the PI, I've seen it many places, that it was over Kyle dancing with the female, and there is video footage of this that is not released to the public, but they have seen it. And it does seem, though, there's an annoyance, there's a confrontation, but the exchange does quickly de-escalate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and if I have to ask, have you? I will admit, maybe I'll watch all of this before the episode comes out, just so I can look at it for myself, so I can have maybe some commentary after this interview. But have you seen the video? These pictures? How public are they?
No, not of the altercation inside the bar.
Okay.
I have heard, I don't know, because it doesn't exist anymore. I've heard that people have seen them and that it used to be, the articles used to be published, the videos used to be available, but they are no longer. I'm not sure of this, but I have seen still in articles that the CMPD gives quotes, and the PEI has quoted that they have seen this video.
Okay, but we can't seem to find it now. That's interesting. Okay.
Right.
What about of course, Dan's there. We have these other people who are there. Do they not get engaged in this altercation? As, for example, does Dan not come up and maybe try to drag Kyle away? Do we know about anything regarding any of that? Were any of these people come to Kyle's defense? Anything like that?
So Kyle's friends actually had just left the bar. They were no longer there. Kyle was by himself. He may have had some other friends there or friends that he had met that night, because as I mentioned earlier, they did have a group of friends there that they had a mutual friend with. Yeah. I'm unclear on that. But Kyle's main friend group, who he was at the comedy show with, they were gone. Dom and his girlfriend, they leave around midnight. Then around 12:15, 12:30, Dan and Christina close their tab. Dan goes up to Kyle and said, "Hey, Kyle, I'm ready to leave." But Kyle says to Dan that he wants to stay and he wants to keep the night going. And he said, "Dan, I will get a cab to your house later to pick up my car."
Huh. All right, so they all go and have this night together, but at the end of the night, Kyle wants to stay at this bar, maybe because he's dancing with this woman who already had a boyfriend, unfortunately. Maybe he didn't know that at the time. And so he decides he's going to stay, and the rest of them decide, okay, well, we're out of here.
Right.
Okay.
And I have also thought to myself, like, why would he be picking up his car if he's drinking that night? So just a few thoughts from my process. I mean, I know people do that, but a few thoughts I had through my thought process throughout all of this research is I could see Kyle, maybe when Dan's leaving, it's only right after midnight. Maybe he's still in, perfect. I could see Kyle thinking maybe he'd still be good to drive his car home at this point. And then who knows, maybe at another point he could have changed his mind and decided, oh, I'll have a family member go and pick my car up. Or maybe he decided to himself, I'll sleep it off on Dan's couch. I'll head out early in the morning. It's all good. So we don't know what he could have been thinking about his car at this point. We just know initially his plan was to get it.
It's always very difficult, as I've said many times, very difficult to get inside the head of missing people. It's much easier to get into the side of the head if we believe they're suspects in disappearances. Much easier to get in those people's heads because we know that they want to get away with a crime. Where it comes to missing people, it's just very, very difficult to say.
It keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I gotcha. Me too. All right, so he's there by himself, and he has this run-in, but it seems by all accounts that this kind of simmered down fairly quickly. Nobody had to get kicked out of the bar or anything. But when does Kyle leave the bar?
So it seems that Kyle places a call to his sister Noelle right around this time when he's about to leave the bar or has just left the bar. It is unanswered. This is just important to note. Also, a few minutes before Kyle leaves the bar, the girlfriend, she leaves the bar. She leaves the bar at 2:17 a.m. Kyle leaves the bar at 2:19 a.m. This is captured on video surveillance, him exiting Buckhead Saloon. It's available online. Anyone can look it up. Just a disclaimer for those who do look it up. The timestamp on the video is slightly off. I'm certain of this.
Okay.
In the footage, the private investigator thinks that Kyle looked a bit wobbly, perhaps staggering.
Hmm.
I don't have an opinion on this after viewing the footage.
Okay. We'll just
I
let
don't.
the we'll just let people try to. I'll find that try to track that video down. We'll surely link to it. We'll allow the listeners and viewers to make the decision
And
for
if I had an
themselves. But
opinion, I would tell you.
okay.
um,
Are we then to
Kyle,
the? I just have to ask this. So this
mhm.
girlfriend, this once again, this is a woman who was a girlfriend, somebody else's girlfriend. Um, she leaves by herself, or did she leave with her boyfriend, or what?
I have asked this question many, many times. I have not been able to get a very clear answer on this.
Hmm.
Um, I know that here's what I do know. I know that when Kyle exits, he does speak to the girlfriend. He briefly speaks to her.
Huh.
The boyfriend, I know that he's somewhat close by because apparently he yells out something to Kyle from across the way. I don't know if that means he's in the doorway, outside the door, or across the street. But it does seem that he is, I don't know if he's beside the girlfriend, but I think that they're in the same vicinity. Um, it does seem the exchange would have been quick because Kyle is then seen alone only 1 minute later at 2:20 a.m. on video, and he's already down the street. But I do know that there is video of this. We can talk about that a little
Yeah, we
more
will.
later.
Okay.
But Kyle does, at this point, leave his jacket and bank card inside the bar in his pocket. Um, for awareness, it's 30 degrees outside. I've looked up the exact hourly weather reports of this
Hmm.
night and every hour of the night. It's also what's been reported. Kyle is wearing a short sleeve t-shirt, pants, and black dress shoes. It is believed that Kyle had his keys, wallet, and a small amount of cash on him. Just to be clear, in something that I'm unclear on, just because he had his wallet on him, I don't know if he had anything in that wallet. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know if he had one card. I'm not sure. Anyways.
Okay, so he's seen leaving at 2:17. This woman though is out there, or two. He's seen. She leaves first, or he leaves first. Please.
Kyle, you're referring to?
Yeah, Cal
I
or the
believe.
this other woman.
So yes, the girlfriend leaves at 2:17
Okay.
outside of Buckhead Saloon, and Kyle exits at 2:19.
Okay, so she leaves first. He leaves second. They
Mhm.
happen to run into each other outside, maybe inconveniently. But then 1 minute later, he's seen walking down the street by himself. And my understanding is he is next seen at this place called Fuel Pizza. What can you say about that place? What have you been able to determine happens there?
So it's reported that Kyle is at Fuel Pizza sometime between 2:20 and 2:40 a.m.
Okay.
He allegedly buys two pieces of pizza and uses the restroom. Later, when questioned, the cashier at Fuel Pizza claims to have a photographic memory, and he says that he remembers Kyle. He is certain of it. The employee says Kyle, he remembers his order. He said Kyle ordered two everything or extreme slices of pizza, aka a piece of pizza with everything on it.
Yes.
Um, he uses the restroom. The employee did not see or pay attention to Kyle leave Fuel Pizza because he got busy because a huge late night rush came in at this time because people are all leaving the bars and they want their late night snack.
Mhm.
According to bank activity and interviews with friends and family, Kyle had a history of going to Fuel Pizza for late night pizza um, before this night. There are Fuel Pizzas all over Charlotte. There's more than one, so it didn't have to be that Fuel Pizza. But this stop was consistent with Kyle's late night habits. As we know, Kyle doesn't have his bank card on him. It's left at the bar in his peacoat jacket. Um, I believe
Yeah,
he
well,
figured
no,
this
we're not
out.
going to get into what you believe. We're just going to cover from some facts right now. So he goes
Okay.
down there. He gets his pizza. I guess being that we were going to get back into the card and how he left that coat there, but he obviously did pay for it. So I mean, they just didn't let him walk out getting it for free, right? He paid somehow.
Right. The family said that they know he had a bit of cash on him. Um, this is what they say. They
Hmm.
said it would have been right under $10. His dad still shares a bank account with him, and he said he could tell how much he withdrew earlier. I don't know if maybe Dan knew what he spent on the cab cash wise or what, but they think he has right under $10 on him, which is consistent with the purchase price of what would have been bought at Fuel Pizza.
Okay. So, all right. So he's at Fuel Pizza, and so he doesn't eat the pizza there. He kind of takes the pizza with him. Is that your understanding?
I'm not sure. I could see it going either way.
All right. But do we have any proof either way?
No,
All right. Is he seen on video after being in the pizza place?
no, just before.
Just before. All right. So we can't even think about a situation where a video might have caught him eating and walking at the same time, for example.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not sure what to think of that. If you got these two pieces of pizza, if we're to believe this, and listeners know how I feel about eyewitness accounts, and I even get more suspicious when somebody starts labeling himself or herself. I have a photographic memory. That even makes me more suspicious of such things. But okay, so he allegedly goes there and leaves, and there's no video of him after this. All right, but that's not saying he wasn't around. We have next on of course, everybody knows that we follow outlines during these interviews, so I'll move on to the next topic. Do we know anything about Kyle's location from his cell phone records? We'll probably touch upon this a little later, but right for now, being that we don't have any video, and we'll get maybe into some eyewitnesses. I don't know if we're supposed to believe them or not, but what do we know about Kyle's location from cell phone records after he allegedly goes to this Fuel Pizza?
So in 2007, cellular data, it doesn't have GPS localizing capabilities. I work for a cell phone company. We have to remember phone pings are not very reliable in 2007. They do not localize anyone anywhere specific. I mention this in case anyone stumbles upon an article about Kyle's case that mentions him being at a specific location or mere feet away from something based on his cell phone data alone. In 2007, cell phone devices used triangulation to estimate the location of a device based on power pings.
Okay.
Devices would ping on the closest tower or the closest tower with the strongest signal. There are two cell towers at play in this case, the
Okay.
Bank of America Tower and the Siegel Avenue Tower. Buckhead Saloon was situated almost smack dab in the middle of both towers, if you
Hmm.
draw a line.
Okay.
It is just very slightly closer to the Bank of America Tower. The Siegel Avenue Tower is, just for reference, in case anyone finds this important, it's 2.3 miles from the NODA area, North Davidson, Charlotte, which is northeast of Uptown. This will come into play. NODA is also a mile and a half north, about a mile and a half, I guess, northeast.
Hmm.
So Cordelia Park, which I'll also reference at times, is a mile and a half away from the Buckhead Saloon. There is talk about whether Kyle went to NODA that night. We can get into that later as well.
Yeah, we
I
will.
know,
I'm just wondering what the cell phone records, as far as can be proven. Now, what I will say is, when you have triangulation, you need 3 points, and it sounds to me here we only have 2 points,
yeah,
which
there's not
it
really
sounds to
another
it.
tower around at this
Yeah.
time. There are today, but there weren't that many around that area in 2007.
All right. So
Um, Kyle's
what we may be saying
his
here is
phone,
maybe if there was another tower, we could be more accurate with this. If we had three, that's what triangulation, triangle, 3 points.
right?
We only have 2 points, the best we can do in this particular disappearance.
Yeah, it's really working off of these two towers. And his phone is pinging on the Bank of America tower all night when he's uptown. His
Hmm.
last makes at 329, it actually routes through the Siegel Avenue tower. So we see a difference in the cell phone pings at this time.
Okay, so right around the Fuel Pizza time and that time immediately after that, we're on the Bank of America Tower, but then right at the end, maybe the last ping or whatever we want to call it, it's on the other tower. It seems that he is closer to the other tower.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Now, what catches my ear as we're talking here is that, he told his friends that he would get a cab ride home. I think that's what you said. He said, of course, you weren't there. I wasn't there, but this is what they said. That they were under the impression that he was going to get a cab ride home. But we now know that that's really, it seems, not what he intended. It seems right after they left and he's out on the street, he's trying to call his sister for a ride. Correct?
Right.
Is that correct? So maybe it seems like there's a change of plans in his mind for some reason. What else? What other reason could you be calling your sister at such a late or early hour if it's not for
Hmm.
a ride?
Yeah, I'm thinking
So
ride or maybe to help with his car,
yeah,
which is
right.
kind of
So
the same thing.
maybe it's just interesting. Maybe he thought, well, I could pay for a taxi, or I could get a ride for my sister for free. Maybe that might be in mind. But it is interesting. He told his friends one thing, but he ended up doing something else. Now I need to ask you this, being that we are talking about cell phone stuff. Is there any proof that he ever did actually try to call a taxi or hail a taxi, anything like that?
Not that I've seen.
Okay. All right. Now, I should ask you this regarding video, being that we've already spoken about Kyle leaving this place, this woman that he was dancing with leaving this place. Is this really, once again, we're not, he's not seen on video again, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. What about, we know this young woman's on video. What about this, her boyfriend, for example? If Kyle is seen going off, like, let's say he was just going off left screen, any indications that Kyle might have been following? Anything like seen, any like thing like that seen on the video?
Mm, yes.
Okay,
So
please.
does seem like the two men could have been following Kyle from the video
Okay.
outside of Buckhead Saloon.
All right. And is this the video that is readily available to be seen on YouTube or somewhere else?
No,
No.
I would imagine that this is kept secret for CMPD.
Okay. All right. So maybe there's an indication that Kyle was being followed. However, we do know that he did go to this Fuel Pizza place. And if you got there, I mean, how far is the Fuel Pizza place away from this bar?
It's extremely close.
Okay. So maybe he could have, once again, just
It's
thinking
like
about
at the
this, if
end
he
of the
was
street.
being
Here's Buckhead
followed,
Saloon. Yeah.
maybe he got to the fuel place before if they were following him or something. Okay.
There is also a pita pit beside Fuel Pizza. So we also, I mean, could they have been following him? Yes, we do have proof that of indication of that, but it also could have been them going to pita pit or
Yeah.
just they were making the same route as him. But yes, we do have that information.
Okay. All right. So we will come back to the rest of that night regarding Kyle, and maybe we'll come back to the cell phone information and a little bit later. But we want to move on to this. Now, of course, we know it's now Friday. And of course, I think what's going to catch a lot of people's minds is, Kyle was supposed to be going to work that Friday. He's already out at like 2 something in the morning. What exactly was his plan? I would say that it sounds to me like he was in a professional job, where maybe you have to show up looking prim and proper in nice clothes, unlike being a podcaster, for example. And but he doesn't show up for work. When do kind of the wheels get spinning to the point that people start thinking, we think Kyle's missing? What went on I guess it's later that day on that Friday?
Yeah, so actually, the first red flag is when Dan wakes up the next morning on Friday morning. Dan wakes up and realizes that Kyle's car is still parked at his house. He finds this odd, but then thinks to himself, maybe Kyle went home with a female. Dan does not go to work that day. He says so in interviews. He tries calling Kyle, and the call goes straight to voicemail. He does mention Kyle has been bad in the past about not charging his phone or keeping it charged at times. Not always, but sometimes. Dan starts to get worried when hours pass and he still isn't able to reach Kyle, and the calls continue forwarding to his voicemail immediately. He calls then Kyle's roommate, Bruce, who says, I haven't seen Kyle. He hasn't been home. This prompts Dan to call Kyle's work. This is when Dan talks to Kyle's supervisor, who confirms the worst, that Kyle has not arrived to work that day. So at this point, that's when Dan calls Kyle's parents, and they all decide they need to file a missing persons report.
Very quickly. All right, so we have a combination of Dan getting up and Kyle's car is there, correct?
Yes.
All right, so he wakes up and Kyle's car is still at his place. And then he calls the roommate. Roommate says, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't see him. I don't know if he came home or not. And then we find out eventually that Kyle doesn't show up for work that day. It's kind of three bad things. Maybe one on its own is not that big of a deal, but surely all three put together are not good. So then the family is alerted, and this missing persons report is filed. What is your understanding about everything that happens next regarding report being filed, friends questioned? Are the police the ones who found this video that we've already spoken? Are they able to track down this boyfriend and girlfriend involved in this argument of some type? What goes on that Friday and maybe the next few days?
Sure. So that night, Dan says that he files the report at 10 o'clock. The actual police report does say that it was filed at 8:15 p.m. So maybe that's just when they left his house. They did file it, it seems, at Dan's home. There, in the days following, was criticism over slow police engagement. Family and friends start emailing the police. They start complaining about, why are there not increased efforts on this case. CMPD does intensify their efforts on November 13th. This is a holiday weekend. That Monday after the weekend is Veterans Day. Okay. So I would assume a lot of people aren't at work that day. That might play into this delay a little bit. As far as Kyle's friends and who was questioned, I know Dan was questioned. I know that Kyle's roommates were interviewed by police. They were not considered suspects. And the police, they finally do ramp things up. I do know that they have access to the videos from that night, as does the private investigator. The family immediately hires this private investigator because they're a little bit upset with the slow inaction by CMPD. So, yeah, I know that Kyle's home is not searched until the next Saturday. So over a week later. Yeah. Okay,
but he has roommates there, right?
Yes, right. They arrive at 6:30 a.m. to search the home. It seems like a surprise kind of rousing of the roommates, like, hey, we're here to search the house. This is when they interview the two roommates who live with Kyle. They search the house. I know they take 3 large waist-size brown bags out of the house with evidence. I know that in reports, the evidence appears to be like bedding and clothing and whatnot. It does say they searched the cars at Kyle's condo. I know this would probably include the roommates' cars. I don't know if this includes Kyle's car or not. So.
Okay. What about these people who Kyle had a run-in with? What about them?
So, yeah, the boyfriend and girlfriend were tracked down by the private investigator who spoke to them. They lived in uptown Charlotte in an apartment building only a few blocks from Buckhead Saloon. I'm certain of this, but there are a lot of reports out there and articles that mention that they were out of town or staying at the Holiday Inn. That is not true. The boyfriend from the bar was interviewed by CMPD. I believe the girlfriend was too. The boyfriend interview is a little bit more what I'd like to focus on here, though, because I have been told by 2 credible sources that there were issues with the way the interview was conducted, perhaps due to inexperience or poor technique. The boyfriend was defensive and quickly shut down. He gave little information to police about the events of the night. This is not an established fact. It's the view of my two separate sources, but I did find it very interesting. My two separate sources do not know one another, and they both told me the same story. So,
All right. So, and what exactly is that story again? That the interview was not that involved or that professional, or maybe you could say that again.
professional. I would hone in on the word professional here.
Okay.
It seems that the way the interview was conducted was kind of due to poor experience and technique
Okay. All right. And I
by the
don't,
interviewer,
yeah,
possibly.
yeah, and I'm not sure I'm going to be surprised by that because, it might be they're just giving half an effort, given that this is Kyle's a grown man, and if he wants to walk off or something, people can obviously do that. Of course, we run into that problem in a lot of disappearances, not just on Unfound, but all of them, a lot of them that happen everywhere. So maybe it just might be that this is kind of they weren't giving it a full effort because they were afraid like an hour from there Kyle was going to show up having said that, he went on a bender for a week or something. All right, so this is common for police techniques. Now, I should ask you, do you know the names of this girlfriend and boyfriend? Do you know their names?
I have been given a first name for the boyfriend, but it's a very common name. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
yeah,
And so nobody, of
would
course
love
the
to know
police
more.
have, but anybody in the public, including yourself, nobody's had a chance to maybe look up and see if this boyfriend has a criminal record or if the woman has a criminal record, anything like that.
If I remember correctly, I don't think they had a criminal record, but I don't want to be held accountable for saying that because I could be
Okay.
wrong, but if I'm gonna guess.
All right. So once again, I'm not asking you. Once again, you don't have to say any names. But what you're saying is you don't have the full names of this boyfriend and girlfriend.
I don't
Okay.
know.
All right. Would you have you tried to get them? Is this like information that is like locked
Oh
up in a
yeah,
vault somewhere? You've tried to get them, just no
I've
success.
tried.
Okay.
I
You
continue
said
to
you
try.
does the private investigator not even know their names?
I actually have not broached that exact topic with him, but
Okay.
I'm happy to.
Okay. All right. So maybe if you ask, you'll get it. You just haven't asked. Okay. All right. So we just don't know the full history of these two people. They may be fine, upstanding citizens, and really, I'm a single guy, but I have to say, if I'm out somewhere and my girlfriend is dancing with some other guy, I wouldn't blame myself. I was a little miffed, but I don't know if I would be miffed at I guess reasonably, logically, I'm hoping maybe I would be more miffed at my girlfriend than at him. But
I
if there's alcohol involved and everything, anything's possible. Okay. So we have this situation. This is all that's going on. Now, I will ask you this. Regarding the video, and once again, we'll get back to it in a little bit, but just your understanding. You live there, you're in the area, you've been to this area. Does it surprise you that there isn't more? Of course, this is 2007, it's not 2022, and video, of course, has
Mhm.
changed a lot. We have 4K now and all that stuff. Surprise you that we only have one public video of Kyle walking on the street? Does that surprise you? Do you think something's going on there? What do you think?
Very much so. It surprises me. Um,
Mhm.
and there may be nothing to the Holiday Inn aspect of it. I know I mentioned earlier they could have been an after party. Dan said that
Mm-hmm.
it did not pan out, so this may be absolutely nothing. But I do know the PI asked the Holiday Inn for their video footage, and they would not give it up.
Okay.
Just something else to note.
Okay. All right. So we've already talked about his apartment. They went in like kind of out of nowhere and got some things. Doesn't I guess as far as we can tell, nothing any no evidence there. And I think I can kind of see why there was nothing there. His car was eventually found, of course, at Dan's. It was checked. Doesn't seem like there was anything that led anything anywhere there at all, which I don't think, given the facts that you've presented, anybody can really be surprised by that. What about flyers and posters? Were they done? Were they handed out? Did they, like, for example, did they go back to that bar like the next night or 2 nights later, 3 nights later, start handing things out? Hey, have you seen this guy? What do you know about anything regarding that?
Yeah, so Dan and the family, they do make flyers and posters. They do start distributing them uptown on Saturday the 10th and onwards. I know they make like button pins, car stickers. They put up a billboard. I know they produce like stamps and things like that over the week. So they're doing everything. They're going all out. On
Mhm.
November 14th, I know that the first billboard of Kyle goes up in the uptown area. Dan also at this time makes a Facebook page, which we mentioned earlier. It's called
Yeah.
Help Find Kyle Fleischmann Dash Missing. It's one of the first missing persons pages on Facebook, actually. It's
Wow.
used to publicize the case, convey general information, and keep everyone up to date and talk about the searches that they're doing. I do know in the first week, the Facebook group audience grows to 20,000 and it eventually reaches 60,000.
Wow. Okay. So they went down. Obviously, nothing happened. Nobody came forward, said, I saw this guy, anything like that, despite all the flyers and everything that were put out,
Yeah.
scouring the area. Okay. Any searches done at this time? Of course, we have some cell phone information, which we'll get into a little later, but
Mhm.
there were some searches done, and where did those? Maybe I'm going to strike that. We'll get back to that later. Let's move on to
Okay.
this. I want to talk about the rest of the investigation, then we'll get to the searches because we're going to kind of combine some things here later. Now, we've already talked about. I think this is something that's really going to catch people's attention as maybe to Kyle's demeanor, what's going on in his head. But you've already stated that he left this bar, but he left his coat and his credit card behind. How was this discovered? Um, was this something where the this bar kind of came forward? Oh, we heard this guy is missing. Here's his stuff. Do we even know how that was determined? The finally this coat and card was found. Do we know anything about that?
Hoping you were going to ask that next. From the bar on Saturday, he took photos of Kyle there to ask if they remembered him. That's when Kyle's pea coat was retrieved. The PI gives Kyle's jacket to public safety dogs. That's the group who does the dog scent tracing. I know the armpits of the jacket Kyle left at Buckhead Saloon were hoovered, aka vacuumed, in order
Okay.
to generate the scent for the tracking dogs in the first searches. The police later used, I think, additional items from Kyle's house. But yes, that is how they're able to get Kyle's belongings back.
All right, so it was just because the police went back to the bar and they said, "Oh, you're looking for a Kyle Fleischman." It just turns out that we have this card with his name on it.
Yeah, I know that the debit card and the coat were there at the bar, retrieved by the PI. I'm not positive how it was discovered, likely process of elimination. I'm not
Mhm.
sure.
Okay. So, a bar is not usually somewhere where you I can see maybe if you give, I'm not a drinker, so I'm kind of going off the map when it comes to my experience. But so was the card there because like he was running a tab, so you just give the card there and it sits there. Is that what you're thinking, or are you thinking something else regarding the card being there?
Yeah, if I had to guess, even when I go places and there's an actual bar, which there was, he is seen at the actual bar, what just the main wood slab. The chairs there, I would put a jacket over the chair with maybe some things in the pocket. So I could see myself even forgetting something like that, and I probably have before, and I would say I'm pretty responsible.
Okay.
Um, there is a
Um,
video at that bar of Kyle on his phone, by the way. It does appear to be a flip phone.
okay.
So,
All right. Um, has anybody, Dan, anybody else's in family, had they ever known Kyle to leave his coat and his credit card any place ever before?
Yeah, Dan does mention in a few interviews that Kyle didn't do it all the time, but it has happened a few times. Yes.
Huh. All right. Well, that is weird. I don't, granted, here in Florida, we don't wear coats, but, leaving my credit card somewhere, I just can't imagine me doing that. But if they say that that was something that he did once in a while, then, I don't know what to make of that. That seems odd. Okay. All right. But these things were left there. Any indications, for example, that being that his card was left there, that there were any suspicious charges, any allegations that somebody used his card for nefarious purposes, anything like that?
No,
Okay. All right. So maybe I should just ask you this then right now. Besides Kyle being missing, what other possessions of his are missing?
it's just his bank card and his jacket.
All
So
right.
that's it from what
All right.
I'm.
What about his wallet?
It seems he has his wallet on his body
All
along
right.
with
So
his
that,
keys.
all right. So that's missing too. Those are all things that have not been
Yeah,
recovered. So
correct.
wallet, keys. So there's a difference. He has a bank card. He has two different cards then?
I'm not sure. I do know the years following college, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a credit card. I used a debit
Mm-hmm.
card. So that could be
Mm-hmm.
the case. I don't know. I
Okay.
do know that that's something that happens sometimes, but
Okay, so maybe he
I have
did
no
have more than
information
one
on that.
card, not unusual. I'm like
Yeah.
you, I only have an ATM card, but maybe I think we're the exception. So he could have had two different cards, not odd. So he has one card on him, maybe, and the other one he leaves behind, seemingly not intending to, but it still seems to me, man, that is forgetful. Okay, so we have the keys, the wallet, and of course, none his phone. None of these things have been found besides himself, and of course, the clothes that were on his back. Okay, moving on. Let's go back to the pizza place. Are we sure that he went and got pizza there? Of course, we've already talked about this person who claims that this person has a photographic memory. Are we sure about this? Any real proof of it?
No, we can't be certain that Kyle made it to Fuel Pizza. His father, Dick, mentioned that there's unreleased Fuel Pizza footage in various interviews throughout 2011. He
Hmm.
refers to a video of Kyle standing outside Fuel that he has seen. There has not been mention of any video of Kyle inside Fuel. I think we discussed that briefly.
Yeah.
I have no further information on Dick's account of this outside video.
Hmm. And maybe I should ask you this. You're once again the way you're looking at the information. How many days after Kyle's disappearance did the police go down there, or did anybody even ask, "Hey, did you see this guy? Pulling the picture up. How many days after did this happen?"
I'm not positive how many days after Kyle's disappearance they ended up going to Fuel. I do know they do. I do know some of the employees at Fuel Pizza do have criminal records. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
do know that the criminal records more so involve assault and weapons charges, like having weapons at their house that I guess they're not supposed to have. Um, they do mention at one point it's at their house, which is why I mentioned that. Um, that's all I really know, other than they had no other record from then forward, the Fuel employees, except for one who ended up, I believe, in Delaware in prison. One of the CMPD detectives did travel up to Delaware to interview this guy, and it seemed to not be very fruitful, the interview. So
Okay. All right. I guess what I'm asking you regarding how many days later, as you know already. If you ask somebody just a few hours after they saw somebody, then, if they say, yes, I did, it's pretty reliable. But if the police or whoever, his family, friends, didn't go down to Fuel Pizza and start handing out his photo until a week later, you of course know that if the person says yes, it's much less reliable. And that's why I'm asking you, how many days later do you think that this identification happened? Any idea?
mm, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of the next week.
All right, so four. 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have to admit that I'm not telling the listeners or viewers or even you what to think, but when I start hearing about people identifying people 4 or 5 days later when they've seen like 1,000 people since then,
Mhm.
and even though, as Cal is just pretty much looks like most white guys. He has no distinguishing features or anything like that. I mean, if he was like as tall as Shaquille O'Neal, then maybe he might be recognized. Or if he was really, really short, like a little person, he might be recognized. But anything in between that, I start getting doubtful if people can really remember people, days later. It's a big question mark in my mind. So I think we have to keep that in mind. And in addition, you've never seen any credit card receipts that he actually went to Fuel Pizza. So if he did go there, he paid with cash.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So just don't know what to think of that. Now, we're going to get back to this video. You've already stated that there's this one video that's public that shows him outside of this bar. It shows him leaving. It
We'll
shows
say
this.
I'm referring to the CMPD. So.
All right. Okay. Very, very, that's fine. So there's only really one video that has been public that shows Kyle on it. Now, your understanding, is this a camera that is part of that bar? Is this a camera across the street, or who owns this camera?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I've been a
Okay.
little unclear on that as well. They make it seem like it was Fuel's outdoor camera, but I'm not certain.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. If Kyle really did go down to the pizza place and then decided to walk back in the direction of the bar, maybe he suddenly thinks, oh, I forgot my coat and my card back at the bar. Would this same camera have caught him walking back that direction?
If he stayed on the same side of the street that he was on, which was the loading dock and then Fuel, then yes, it would have absolutely caught him.
Okay. However, as far as you know, he's only caught on that camera the one time, the first time,
Right.
right before he allegedly goes to the pizza place. Okay. Now, have you been able to determine, once again, we know how much video has changed over the years. It very well even could have been in 2007 that the places were still using VHS tapes to record things. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but possible. We now know that no place does that. Do we even know what kind of video coverage was in that area at the time between like ATM machines or traffic cameras or anything like that? Do we even know what kind of coverage there was in that area at the time?
No, I mean, I know Buckhead Saloon had multiple cameras. That was kind of at the end of the street. It seems like Fuel might have had something right directly next to Fuel at the loading dock entrance. They had one. There's also a parking garage across the street that's kind of attached to the Holiday Inn. It seemed that they had one, but it seemed like it was very, very poor quality.
Okay. All right. So we just have, once again, well, we have this one video, and as you've already said, maybe some people have watched the video and said, he looks a little shaky in it, but some people might say maybe he doesn't look shaky at all. And we know some people can be drunk and not look shaky at all. Of course, it depends on a lot of different
Yeah,
things.
and that's the one of him leaving Buckhead Saloon that they
Mhm.
on the other video that he's seen in, I've seen and I will weigh in on. I think he looks completely normal,
All
his
right.
gait.
All right. And
Next
what is
one.
that video?
So that's the video that so basically if you walk out of Buckhead Saloon and you take a right, you will be going down College Street. It's actually kind of like northeast, but I say it's almost if you keep going, it's exiting uptown. And Kyle is crossing the street at Buckhead Saloon, same street, but he's just crossing to the other side. He's walking down that street. That is when he passes this loading dock entrance. The loading dock entrance, it's got a camera located on the inside of it, on the back wall. It faces out to the street sidewalk. The camera captures Kyle walking alone on the street in the direction of Fuel Pizza, which is literally just yards past where the video cuts off. Obviously, it's in the shape of a garage, and you just see him
Yeah.
walking right past it.
Mhm.
His gait looks normal in that video. You can see him walking all the way through. the
But it doesn't
camera.
show him going back the other way toward the bar.
No,
All right, maybe it does, but that's not a video that's ever been made public.
correct.
Okay. All right. So maybe I should ask you this regarding the police, and of course the bar does get involved. They say, "Hey, yeah, we do have his card. We do have his code." Has any employee ever stated, "You know what? There was this guy that was trying to get back in, saying he left his coat there and his card there, but we kind of blew him off," or anything like that? That any employee saw him like trying to get back into the bar because he forgot these things.
And I asked the PI whether it was his belief that Kyle went back to Buckhead Saloon, and on plenty of the questions I asked him, he said, "I don't know, I don't remember." He said immediately, no, he did not go to Buckhead Saloon. And I said, "Did he call there?" And he said, no. So
Okay. And
that's what I know.
and of course we know the Fuel Pizza was open, I guess, to at least 2:30. I don't know what the closing time of it was. What would have been the closing time for the Buckethead Saloon that early
I
morning?
think it was at 2:30.
Okay. So we have to be open to the idea that maybe he did try to go back there and they were closed.
Mm-hmm.
Possible? Certainly possible. Okay. So maybe we have to think about that. Okay. Let's move on to these phone calls. We've already discussed he tried to call his sister for a ride, even though he told his friends he was going to get a cab. But right after that, he tried calling his sister, presumably to get a ride. What do we know about any other texts or calls that Cal made after around this time, after this call trying to reach his sister? What do we know about any of that?
So if we want to be really specific, we can say that Kyle's phone made,
Okay,
because there's a
that's great.
lot
We
of
don't know.
debate.
Certainly true. We
Yeah,
don't know
I
who's
think
using
that
his
he
phone.
did,
Yeah.
but that doesn't matter. Some people don't, and that's totally
Yeah. Very
believable.
good point. We don't know who he's using his phone, but what do we know about his records, those things?
Yeah, so at 2:42, that is when, if you believe he went to Fuel Pizza, that's kind of around the time where it would make sense for him to be leaving. He doesn't make phone calls for that period of time until 2:42. At that time, a call from Kyle's phone to a business he visited earlier that day, there's no answer. I do not have any clear information on what this business was. I don't know if it was the cab company they called earlier in the day. I don't know if it was work. I don't know if it was a restaurant they went to and they were walking around. I don't know. I did
Huh.
ask the PI, was this Buckhead Saloon? He also said no. So
Interesting.
anyways, at
Okay.
2:42, he places multiple calls. So I'm assuming he makes very quick calls in this 1 minute time frame. He also then calls his voicemail. There's no information anywhere on whether he had a message or why he called his own voicemail. Between 2:42 and 2:57, Kyle calls his dad, Dick, 3 different times. There's no answer. Dick says that Kyle called his cell phone and his work office line, which is interesting. The calls to Dick's cell phone do not show up on Dick's phone as missed calls. They do see these calls later. I believe they got the cell phone records on the following Tuesday. I think Dick also mentions that he turned his cell phone off while he was sleeping that night. Dick worked for Fidelity. He was actually traveling that night several hours away in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is north. He was staying at a hotel, work travel. I think that Kyle may have been aware of his dad's travel because, and I just say this because he obviously knew his mom and Noelle were at the comedy show without Dick. I think he would have
Yeah.
noticed his dad's not there. Anyways, the calls to Dick, Kyle tries calling Noelle again right after that at 3 a.m. She does not answer. As a reminder, Noelle's his sister. This is a strange part, between 3 and 3:28 a.m., there are no calls made from Kyle's phone. I would love to know what happens during this time period
Sure.
because we have a gap in the timeline.
Yeah.
Then at 3:28, there's a call from Kyle's phone to Dan. It rings for 4 seconds. There is no answer. Then 1 minute later, there's a call at 3:29. It's the last call of the night. So this one's kind of important. The call is to Bruce, who is his roommate. It rings for only 6 seconds. before the calls ended. Bruce doesn't answer. To be clear, Kyle does not leave any voicemails that night. No voicemails. Just want to be clear on that. He does not
Wow.
send any text messages. No calls are answered. It is late. I would be asleep. So
Mhm.
that might answer why these people aren't answering their phones. Then
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock a.m., this is when Kyle's phone, per the cell phone records, it appears to be dead and off. His device is no longer on at this point.
Mhm. Okay. So we have all these calls. I'm just kind of adding them up, maybe 7, 8 calls. No
Mm-hmm.
messages to anybody, not to his father, not to his
Nope.
roommate, not to his friend Dan. He calls this business for whatever reason. We don't know what the business is. Nobody ever hears his voice. No messages anywhere. No text anywhere. And maybe I should ask you this, being that his phone did go off around 4 a.m., although it does seem like there's quite a, we have a half hour between like this last phone call and it technically going off. Do we know anything about Kyle's charging habits? How often did he charge it? Now, of course, we go back to 2007. My perception is because phones did a lot less back then, their batteries lasted a lot longer. But what can you say about anything we know about his charging habits? Is it possible that his phone, maybe he was afraid to leave a message because he thought that it was going to die and he wanted to save it, hoping for somebody else? What do you know about any of that?
Yeah, that's very much so a scenario that I would consider here. As Dan has mentioned, that there are times where Kyle didn't keep his phone charged and juiced up to the best of his ability at times. That
Mm-hmm.
could be it, or his phone could have been charged and it could have been turned off. I don't know. These are all things, like I tell
Mm-hmm.
you, it keeps me up at night.
Right.
One thing I do kind of think about at times, or I've seen people talk about, is were these calls under duress? My question to that would be, why wouldn't he call 911 if he were
Right.
under duress? Just something for people to think about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's very logical thinking. Thank you. Okay. So regarding all these calls, we know there are a ton of calls over about 40 minutes at least, if not longer, almost 50 minutes maybe. Nobody's
Mm-hmm.
picking up. I don't think we can be surprised by any of that. But on the other hand, they were only for 6 seconds. He really wasn't giving anybody really a chance, even if they were up to pick up. I mean, I have my phone right here. Somebody calls me. What are the odds I'm going to pick it up in 6 seconds if I'm one on one side of my condo and the phone's on the other? It's going to take a little while. It doesn't seem like he gave anybody a chance to pick up. So, regarding this calls and putting them with the pings, what do we know about the pings? We've already talked about these towers. Where were those calls pinging from, if we can even talk about that with any accuracy? What do we know about that?
Yeah, they're all pinging off the Bank of America tower. Um, that's also where his device is pinging off of when he is at the Dane Cook comedy show, and really all night long. The PI has confirmed this as well. It's always pinging off of the Bank of America tower, cell phone tower, until that last call, which the cell phone basically starts routing through the Siegel Avenue tower. It only routes it through when he's making that call. So we don't really know past that point.
Okay, and that was the call to Bruce.
Yes,
That was
that
the
was the
last
call to
call.
Bruce.
So, some reason and I don't have you have these things right in front of you. I do not, but just the way I'm remembering this. So he tried calling Dan, and that pinged off the Bank of America tower. But then just a little bit later, he calls Bruce, and it pings off a totally different tower.
I'm not sure in the differentiation between that 1 minute and
Hmm.
what that would have been. I don't have clarity on that. So it could have also been the Siegel Avenue Tower, conceivably, but it could have been the Bank of America. I do know that that last call was the Siegel Avenue Tower, though. So
Okay, all right. So totally different. We've already talked about these towers. Bank of America, near where the theater is, near where the bar is, and this other one kind of
uptown, yep.
farther away. Okay.
It's outside of the uptown range. Yeah.
Okay, so we have these pings, and then we know that at 4 a.m., one way or another, the phone is off, and we don't have any phone information after that. And then when people tried calling the next day, it was going directly to voicemail.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I have it in my notes. Regarding these pings, regarding either of these towers, are either of these towers near a body of water? I do know that there is a river that kind of goes through this area, near this area, but surely not like right along this. What can you say about this body of water or river and how close it is to like these two towers in this area?
So I don't believe any pings put Kyle that close to a large body of water. They do put Kyle near more small bodies of water, like creeks, culverts, lakes within parks. They could conceivably put Kyle near more rural terrain.
Hmm.
I've seen many people talk about how urban Charlotte is and how he would have been, if killed, it would have happened in that urban area. Not
Hmm.
necessarily. As
Okay.
soon as you leave that city center of Uptown, it's like literally the kind of a circular-ish shape. As soon as you're exiting that area, you can walk just blocks down College Street past Fuel Pizza. I've done it. I've taken pictures of it, literally 2 blocks out. You run into woods, overgrown areas, etc. One thing I will say about Charlotte in 2007 and today, it's an extremely fast growing city.
Hmm.
So much so that I would say there's tons of construction, tons and tons of construction. There's tons of high rises and buildings being built in the uptown area. I think it's a huge focus for the city of Charlotte. And I don't know if they have the capability of keeping up with some of these maybe more rural, even blocks out of uptown areas in terms of the overgrowth and keeping everything looking very pristine, keeping these areas not overgrown. I think they have an issue with that. I see it around my house, and I'm 2 minutes from uptown. So that's something to consider as well.
Okay. But there is a river that is like what to the west of like this bar and everything, correct? I don't even know what river it is.
Yeah, there's rivers honestly in every direction you go. Maybe not ones that you would think of as big rivers, but yep,
Mhm.
there are rivers.
Okay. All right, and we have to remember, as we stated, he left his coat behind. It's 30 degrees out at night. He's in a short sleeve shirt. These are obviously going to be
Mm-hmm.
some considerations that people have. Now, there was a cab driver. We've talked about taxis and them taking them to the concert. But we have this cab driver who is allegedly a witness. As the listeners know, they know how I feel about these things, but we can talk about it. What do you know about this cab driver who said that he saw Kyle and what was the story out there?
Yeah, the cab driver he doesn't claim to have any interaction with Kyle, much less giving him a ride. He claims to see Kyle walking up North Davidson Street or actually like right at 3:25 a.m. Yep. I don't buy his identification of Kyle. I don't rule it out either. CMPD says that the facts that he says of his eyewitness account directly contradict the details of basically Kyle's clothing and his physical characteristics that evening.
Hmm.
So, something to consider.
Okay. All right. So, is your impression that this taxi driver came forward all on his own? That he found out Kyle's
Uh,
missing and said, "You know what? I think I saw that guy."
no, I don't think so. In the immediate aftermath of Kyle's disappearance, the family, the PI, and friends start calling all of the cab companies around the area. I think they actually reach out to someone who says, "Yes, I saw him." I could be wrong.
Okay. All right. Now, something that has gotten a lot of attention, my opinion, kind of going to web sleuths and a lot of reading that I've done, are these dogs in a scent in a nearby park. There's some stories regarding. I think you mentioned this park earlier. It seems to be north of where the bar is, where Fuel Pizza is, and everything. Dogs in the scent. What can you say about all of that?
Sure. So this is a big answer. There's a lot with the dog scent and tracing here. I will say on November 14th, I think that's when the following Wednesday, the first dog search is done by public safety dogs. who often worked on and helped with like cases like this. I know the police department did not have the resources or funds at the time to pay for this. So I think it's more so the family and the PI deploying public safety dogs. Linda, who is a dog handler, she took 2 of her trained dogs out separately. They both take the exact same route separately when they're tracing Kyle's scent. The dog trail, whether you believe it, great or not, I know it's a controversial topic.
Yep.
The
Just tell me
dog
what they did.
trail, it loops around Fuel and the Holiday Inn block, which Linda interprets this as maybe Kyle being followed or trying to lose someone around this area. Next, the dog route kind of follows Kyle's scent from Fuel Pizza up North Brevard Street. North Brevard Street runs parallel to where North Davidson Street runs, which is kind of interesting because if you look up articles, North Davidson Street is constantly referenced in this case. I don't know why. But it loops up North Brevard Street and then it loops down around Alpha Mill and 12th Street, that area. They do show a dog route going, they do not, sorry, show the dog route going up North Davidson though. In 2007, Cordelia Park, it's known as a really dangerous area. This is a very important park in this Kyle Fleischmann case. It is constantly referenced. There's a lot of gang violence in this park. Dan mentions Kyle does not go to this area. There's no reason he would ever go in that direction. That's just what Dan says. That Wednesday night, after the day of initial dog tracing by Linda and her dogs, Mike with public safety dogs, also a dog handler, he's walking around. He befriends this homeless man under an overpass near a homeless shelter. This man tells Mike, I saw Kyle killed over by Cordelia Park. I don't know where the body was taken. Because of this, the next day, they have the dogs there. They're obviously going to at least check this out. It's Thursday. Linda takes her dog to Cordelia Park. This is when the dog picks up Kyle's scent again here in this park. So basically the scent trace was not continuous. It doesn't seem strong or highly certain. It goes up one area, then it's basically there's a blank patch in the middle where there is no scent and they're catching it again up in Cordelia Park. So.
And how far is Cordelia Park from Fuel Pizza, for example?
It's over a mile.
Okay, so certainly walkable.
More, yeah.
But on the other hand, your opinion, once again, as a local, Kyle knew about this area and knew that it was kind of a shady area. And if you're by yourself at night, maybe you want to stay away from there.
Definitely.
Kyle wouldn't have known that. Okay. I should ask you, I know we talked about where Dan lives, where Kyle lives very early in this conversation. If Kyle decided to walk in that direction, is that in the direction of where he lived, or is that like in the opposite direction?
In the complete opposite direction.
Okay. All right, so we have this Cordelia Park. The listeners, and maybe Reggie, if you've listened to Unfound and heard me talk about dogs, I have a lot of doubts regarding them. I think dogs get things way more wrong than they ever get things, right. I think they have a very shoddy record as far as success goes. I understand, they found a missing child once in a while, but I don't know if that's luck or something else. So we have to consider that. We also consider that, that we have a homeless person saying that, but then, he says, I saw somebody, but I don't know what they did with the body. So, he knows everything but what you really want to know. So we have to consider that. I'm not trying to turn anybody off, but this is how we have to, maybe be cynical about these things. All right, so we have Cordelia Park, and not sure what to make of that. But Reggie, you're certainly right that that place has been named a lot. And even the reading I've done on my own. All right, so I guess what we're saying here then is that no dogs, for example, went in a direction that kind of showed that maybe, Kyle got this crazy idea to walk home. There were no dogs that went in the direction that could have shown that Kyle was walking in that direction and disappeared.
No.
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on to this. We usually don't do this, but when I do have independent investigators, bloggers, people such as that, we do a little theorizing more than I would ever do with a family member for a lot of different reasons. But we're going to do a little bit of that right now. I'm going to do a little bit of that with Reggie right now. Let's go over a variety of theories. And as you know, you have the outline in front of you. Kyle got picked up. Any proof of this? Has anybody ever offered up any opinion on, would Kyle really have gotten in a car with a stranger or something like that? Has that been a topic? Has anybody who knew Kyle well voiced an opinion on this? And then
I've tried
plus
to
any
get an
proof of
answer
this?
on that, and I haven't gotten really a clear answer on whether that would be of the norm for him.
Mhm.
Regarding proof of him getting picked up by a vehicle, there's no evidence. Dick at one point speculated that Kyle may have gotten into the wrong cab. Funny enough, right before this interview, I saw this article. It's actually by the Charley Project. It's really old. It
Okay.
does say
My
that
friend Megan.
there's video of Kyle being picked up by a cab. I don't know where that's coming from. I've never seen that before. Kyle is Kyle getting into a vehicle, as far as proof goes, and my next point, it could explain the discontinuous dog trace, and it could explain why he's not seen again on video uptown. That's all I've got.
Okay. All right. And we have to remember that, if we are to believe, and being that all these calls that we've already talked about are to people who are his family or, a best friend or a roommate, if somebody else were using his phone, would they know that? I mean, unless he actually had, dad, roommate Bruce, father Dick, friend Dan,
Right.
I mean, that's possible, depending on how type the names into there, and even in my own phone, like for my own phone, I have dad, DAD, for my dad's phone number in Pennsylvania. So it's certainly possible. But it does seem, though, that all of these people who were called are people who logically Kyle would have called if he wanted a
Yes,
ride. All right.
I
So if
agree.
somebody did have his phone, they were just happening to get all of these numbers correct. So we have to consider that. Let's talk about those fight people. It wasn't necessarily fight, argument people. Um, Given that we have this Cordelia Park, did these people live near Cordelia Park? Do you
They
even know?
live just a few blocks from Buckhead Saloon.
They,
They live in Uptown. So
okay.
no. The
All
answer is
right.
no.
So no. All right. So even if these dogs, so we don't have really a connection there. Of course, these people were tracked down. You made it sound like maybe the guy wasn't that totally forthcoming, but I don't know what to make of that. We don't even know who the guy is, to really even make a judgment on that. Maybe if he has a long criminal record, then that, of course, would mean something. But any proof that these argument people might have tracked him down, anything like that.
Mm, the only proof I would think of, two things come to mind.
Okay.
The the shouting that happened twice throughout the night at Buckhead Saloon, inside and outside, and
Hmm.
then the two guys were seen taking the same route as Kyle down College Street
Okay.
after leaving the bar.
Okay, and we have that. Um, any proof that these two guys who might have been following, they might have just been going to Fuel Pizza just like he was. They just happened to be in the right direction. But any any idea that they might could be connected to this boyfriend and girlfriend at all? Do you
Yeah,
know if
that
police were
is the
having
boyfriend and his male friend. Yes.
they were? Is that who it was?
Yes. Yes, it was the boyfriend and then just a guy friend of his.
Okay, all right, maybe there's
So,
something there. But we also
here's
have
that.
to remember to maybe to counter that was like maybe at 2:25 that morning, but Kyle's phone was still being used at like 25 after 3, so like an hour later,
Right.
something like that in calling and but just for a few seconds. All right. So no proof of that. Maybe they were stalking him or following him. All right. Now, some rumor that has popped up, and I think has something to do with Cordelia Park, was that Kyle was buried in a local construction project, and I just have please explain.
So I do want to take just a little bit more time on this one because this is such a
Go ahead.
focal point in this case.
Go ahead.
Um, Kyle's family puts this possibility pretty high on their list of possibilities as far as Kyle's disappearance goes. There was I know I've mentioned a ton of construction near Buckhead Saloon and Fuel Pizza at this time, and really everywhere throughout Charlotte. There was the NASCAR Hall of Fame, the light rail city center line being built, the Bank of America Center, and the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. They were on the block immediately opposite of Buckhead Saloon, right across 5th Street. At the Ritz-Carlton, concrete foundations were set to be poured the very next day after Kyle's disappearance. This is something talked about frequently. There was also an apartment building up North Davidson Street on North Davidson and 16th being built at the time. This place is referenced all the time. It's called the Edgeline Flats on Davidson. I'm fine mentioning it because you can look it up online. You can find reviews on the apartment on Yelp, and people that live in the apartment literally leave Yelp reviews saying that Kyle Fleischmann is buried under my building. There is a search warrant and they're on this building, so this is public. A federal judge did approve a search warrant of 16th Street between Caldwell and North Davidson in 2009, which is like a year and a half or 2 years after Kyle's disappearance. What's interesting is it's filed by the ATF. This is to allow agents to take cadaver dogs out on the area. Federal prosecutor is present when this happens, and after the search is concluded, a judge orders the documents to be sealed. Even though it is an open case, this is still somewhat unique. It does make you wonder what was found throughout the search. There was a plot of land here at the Edgeline Flats. I guess they were going to build on it. This plot of land was not searched according to the PI. And this is something that it seems bothers him. The PI also, this is just another eyewitness account, like there's so many in this case. The PI spoke to a woman named Mary. She lives directly across this construction site, which are the Edgeline Flats now, and this open lot. Mary says that she smelled something horrible of decay for weeks and weeks right at this time. She also swears that she saw a pickup truck with its lights on doing something in the construction area in the wee hours of the morning around 3, 4, whatever a.m., very middle of the night, basically, of the exact night that Kyle disappeared. Take that as you will. There is also an anonymous letter sent to CMPD. It states the workers the next morning found Kyle's body at the Edgeline Flats construction site. They covered him up because they didn't want to deal with it. I don't discount it or rely on it. It's an anonymous letter. I consider it, and that's what it is. The owners of the construction site initially, before the search warrant was secured in 2007, they were contacted and they flat out said under no circumstances would they allow their property to be searched. It would put a bad name on their property, so take it as you will. Just having a search in general, that is. Construction site burial, as far as we're talking proof of this, scenario or rumor, it could explain why the body would not have been found or hasn't been found till this day. The apartment building, the Edgeline Flats on Davidson, it's 0.3 miles away from Cordelia Park, just for reference.
Okay. Now, getting back to this warrant or that they went up and looked over this area and then it got sealed. I mean, surely we're not saying that they found Kyle's remains and then they covered it up or anything, right?
No,
I mean, that's not
I don't
really,
think his remains,
that's not what
no.
we're saying. So, I mean, what are we
More so, I
saying
would
that,
assume someone's name or they found like a weapon or a knife or anything like that, or anything that could maybe hurt someone's reputation, that would be a reason for sealing something for sure.
Okay. All right. Not sure what to make of all of that. I
Among
hear a
other
lot. I
reasons,
hear a
those are
lot.
just a few examples.
I get you. We do know that at least once in the history of mankind, somebody has been put in an abutment to a bridge or something like that.
Yeah.
It just seems to me though that the public has an idea that that happens maybe a lot more often than it really happens as far as people being found. But I guess it's I guess we have to at least entertain it, and maybe there's something. Cordelia Park, that place is right there. Maybe. Okay. Now you added this to the outline. I want to bring this up. The fuel pizza employee theory. What is this one?
So they are supposedly the last people who saw Kyle. If you believe Kyle did make it to Fuel Pizza, I'm not sure what the motive here would be. Like I've mentioned, some of these guys did have a record, and then one of them ended up in prison. Uh, Nothing really has come of this. I know that the PI does not hold much weight in this theory after speaking with him, but it is a theory that many people highly consider and like to talk about. So,
Mm-hmm.
avenue
Okay.
for research.
All right. Yes, and I want to reiterate. I have to admit, just because everybody knows that I'm the cynic, I'm not even sure if Cal ended up at this pizza place or not. So that's me. All right. Moving on. Gang member theory.
So, Cordelia Park was a really bad area.
Mm-hmm.
It's known for its gang activity, like we've said. I should mention that when the search parties were out here searching, I know that Mike, one of the dog handlers with public safety dogs, he is there with Kyle's friends. I mean, they were all, there were different groups going out on these searches.
Yeah.
They were searching Cordelia Park. They had to actually vacate and leave the premise when they were searching it because gunshots rang out in the park
Wow.
while they were there. So just goes to show it's a very unsafe area. If that could have been where Kyle ended up, he could have run into something bad, especially at that time of night. Just
Right.
something to consider.
Cool.
And some people think that this is what happened based on the dog tracing evidence. This theory, the gang member theory, could also, if you believe in Kyle being disposed of, for lack of a better word, in the construction site, these theories could somewhat go hand in hand if you want to make them go hand in hand.
Okay. Let me ask you this: has anybody ever said, "Well, Kyle might have walked in that direction because he knew somebody in that direction. Maybe not right there in that area because it sounds pretty bad or something, but he could have been walking to somebody's house that he knew that lived north of that, in that area. Anything like that?"
Yeah, Dana specifically said me and Kyle, they were best friends. They hung out all the time. They shared a gym membership. They went to the gym together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He specifically says Kyle did not know anyone that lived in Noda near Cordelia Park, which, to be clear, they are different areas,
Okay.
somewhat. He makes it very clear, I don't know why Kyle would ever go there. Kyle is from Charlotte. He went to high school here, etc. He's from here. He knows the area. He would know not to go there, and they do not have friends there. So
Okay. Let's
he
move
could
on
have
to
been
one.
confused.
Move on to one more theory. Once again, listeners know we don't do too many theorizing, so we're just keeping these things short. But accident theory. What do you mean?
So I didn't actually really even think this one fully out to kind of lay out in this episode, but I think it is a bit obvious. Kyle could have gotten into a situation that is an accident, whether he walked upon something, fell over something into a body of water, or fell off a mini cliff, kind of ran into an area that was dangerous terrain wise. Maybe he was peeing out in the woods somewhere and fell over. Who
Yep.
knows? Accidents happen. There is no true evidence in this case that is cold hard evidence of foul play. So this does have to be considered.
Okay. Let me ask you this once again, being that you know the area, I've driven by Charlotte many times, be driving between Florida and Pennsylvania, going up Route 77. It's a beautiful city, especially at night, like 3 in the morning, which is usually when I'm going through this area
Great skyline.
because I want to avoid the traffic. But given that it was 30 degrees, given that he only had a short sleeve shirt, I would be thinking, well, his first concern should be, you know what? I got to get warm. All right. The first thing I have to do, it's freezing out here. I left my coat at that bar. It's closed. They aren't going to let me back in. What places would have, now we know there's that hotel, which hotels are open 24/7. You can at least go into the lobby. But besides that hotel, any other places in that area that he could have gone to get warm that would have been open at, let's say, 3 in the morning?
So a lot of these businesses and storefronts, even along College Street, they have like concrete, if you will, awnings that you could kind of like sit under. I'm sure there were areas even along that street where there's a chair up under it. Yeah, that's still going to be probably somewhat cold, but
Yeah.
it's somewhat secluded, behind maybe a column. There are definitely little nooks like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he could have really sheltered kind of in anywhere uptown. I'm sure there are plenty of little places like that he could have sat on a bench, sat on a picnic table, anything. I think, even though you mentioned not to consider this one, but I do think that Holiday Inn, I'd go there and
Yeah, right.
camp out in the
I'm
lobby,
really
act like
just,
I'm waiting for
it's still,
someone.
you can shelter on a bench all you want, but it's still outside. I'm
Yeah.
asking places that, that actually have heat, places you could go in that area where he could, he'd be thinking, well, I've been to this area before. I'm thinking, I could go here to get warm. I could go there to get, how many places would there have been like that? Many?
More than I can count on my fingers.
Wow. Okay, more. All right.
Hotels,
So
apartments,
Charlotte
hundreds.
has. All right. So what you're saying is Charlotte, even though it's a Thursday night, Friday morning, there are plenty of businesses open where he could have just walked in and sat down and got warm for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm a little surprised by that. Okay, if you say so, I believe it. All right. So we have to think about that. That's once again, if he is thinking in a logical manner, and it seems like he was, being that he's using his phone and everything. Like I said, it would be my first concern if I'm out at 3 in the morning at 30-degree weather. My first thought would be, you know what? Before I do anything, I got to get warm. I can call anybody anytime, but I have to get, inside somewhere. Okay, just a thought.
Even a parking garage, by the way, would be a great option.
Yeah, once again, I start thinking, sometimes parking garage have lobbies or something that might, or even a security stand or something like that.
Yes,
Maybe a security
definitely.
guard will have some pity on you, get inside and get a little warm for a little bit. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's move this kind of back to you, Reggie. How is working on this affected your life? Let's say maybe 15 years ago. Could you have ever imagined in 2022 that you would be so deep into a disappearance, especially since it seems like it's disconnected from like your everyday job and everything? Could you have ever imagined this for yourself? And, how has this affected your life?
I don't think I would have maybe imagined this. It's a bit wild to me, the amount of information that I have amassed and that I have even in the back recesses of my mind that we haven't even begun to broach. There's
Mhm.
so much information that I have. You could
Mhm.
ask me the most obscure question about this case and I could probably answer it. And if I couldn't, I'd just tell you I didn't know. But
Mhm.
it's a lot of information. It's a lot to keep track of. And there's so much more that I would love to know and hope to also know. As far as how it's impacted maybe my life, I
Yeah.
don't really know if this case is much about me. I think that just finding answers and giving the family closure is the ultimate goal here, and Kyle's friends. I think another search needs to be done. I think
Mhm.
another search should be done. I don't think that it's too late to do so. I think I know Kyle's case is still an active investigation within both missing persons and the homicide department. CMPD is still the lead investigative on this case. The reward is 50 grand, and
Oh.
I just hope that this can bring about further answers, further information, anything to help breathe new energy and life into this case, because it's just crazy to me that it's gone on this long.
Hmm. Now I have to ask, being that you did say that for a period of time in your life you did go to Washington D.C., did some work there, and I think you said earlier in this conversation you now work for a telecommunications company or something like that. Has this maybe caused you to reconsider maybe a career change? Maybe working for the FBI or something like that. You said you're 31. There's still a lot of time that if you wanted to change that. Is that something that's come to mind, or do you think that this is just going to continue to be something that's on the side for you?
I think on the side, I really truly do love my job, which
Okay.
I know isn't always the case. I really love where I work. I have a
Mhm.
wonderful job and I would love to keep it. But
Okay.
this is, yeah, I mean, working for the FBI would be an amazing pipe dream. Who knows?
Hmm.
Sky's the limit. I don't want to ever discount anything.
Hmm.
So this is definitely something I'm extremely passionate about, and I will continue to be
Yeah.
very passionate about.
Okay. Do you have any working on this by yourself? Maybe in our conversations we have, maybe you've told me you've had some other help, people maybe to bounce ideas off or anything. How has that gone? Are you working with other people on this or what?
Yes, I've been collaborating with two others on this. Um, they kind of just do it privately, but they love helping me out, and they are also extremely interested and dedicated to this case just as much as I am. We talk
Mhm.
in a group chat almost every day,
Wow.
bouncing ideas off one another. It's been incredible, and it's really helped push things further, and just helping find more information and collaborating with one another. So they've definitely been vital to this and all of the research that I've even presented here
Hmm.
today.
I need to ask you this. You've mentioned this private investigator. You're not going to mention this person's name. How often do you talk to this person? Is this person still actively working on this? What can you say about your interactions with this person?
So I've talked to him at length for a long time. Once I've talked to him twice, though. His office is familiar with what I'm doing and what I am working on, and
Hmm.
they know that I've been doing so for months. When I did contact them initially months ago. The floor is open. He told me to definitely call anytime I want to discuss the case and bounce ideas off of him or ask him questions. So he's been extremely helpful with my research on this case and just helping me gain clarity on some of these things. He
Hmm.
has not heard from Dick in the past year and a half.
Wow.
I don't think there's any reason for that necessarily, other than there really hasn't been a reason for him, I guess, to talk to Dick in a year and a half. I know they have spoken over the years and they've stayed in touch, and he's been helpful, but I'm sure there's a lot of other, jobs that the PI is working on as well. So
Okay. All right. I know that I realize that you do not run the page, but I think we should publicize it anyway. What is the name of the Facebook page for Kyle Fleischmann's disappearance?
it's help find Kyle Fleischmann dash missing.
All right. Help find Kyle Fleischmann dash missing. Okay. And this is not, once again, this is not a page that you started. You're not even an administrator on it. You're just a member on it like everybody else.
Yep,
Is
just a
that
drop
correct?
in the bucket.
Okay. But do you personally have anything set up for your work that you have been doing? Anything like that? Have you set up your own personal page or website or anything for any of the work that you've personally been doing?
No, but that's a wonderful idea. Anyone is welcome to contact me just on social media. I
Hmm.
love bouncing ideas off of people and just kind of discussing the case. So send me a message if you have anything worthy of talking about or any ideas that have come up that we haven't discussed.
Okay. Why don't you give out whatever name that you use for Facebook, and then why, if you feel comfortable doing so, if you maybe want to just give out your email address, maybe you have a special email address you use for this work, maybe. Why don't you give out both of those pieces of information right now?
So my name, you can search me. It's Reggie, Regi, Simpson, Simpson, Ahern. And that's on Facebook. You can message me. My email is my maiden name. It's Reggie, Regie, Simpson, email. So RegiESimpson @gmail. You can send me an email.
Gmail.com. Okay, very good. Reggie, any final words before we complete this interview?
Just if anyone has any information, contact me or contact CMPD. Their phone number is 704-336-7600.
All right, very good. Reggie, great job, and I appreciate you appearing on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that was my August 23rd, 2022 interview with Reggie Simpson Ahern, a specialist on Kyle Fleischmann's disappearance. I thank her for joining me and all of you on both audio and video for this episode. You should know there was only one short edit toward the end of the interview. That is how well Reggie knows this case. Very impressive. Before I get into my summation, I remind you to please check out Kyle's page on the Unfound website, theunfoundpodcast.com. I have some still shots and diagrams that will help you understand his disappearance better. In addition, I've done a map and route analysis video that you can now find on Unfound's YouTube channel. Okay, so what caught my ear during the 2-hour interview with Reggie? Here's what we can't deny about disappearances such as these. And as you heard at the beginning of this episode, I listed some other cases that are similar to Kyle's. What we can't deny is had these missing people not gotten separated from their groups, they wouldn't have disappeared. I mean, really, had Jesse Ross not left that room on his own, do we really believe all those students, including Jesse, would have disappeared? Of course not. It's outrageous and silly to think such things. Likewise, there's no way any violence-minded person could have known that Jesse or Travis or Brian or Andrea or Kyle or whoever else would leave the protection of their friends and families to go off alone. Meaning, if we are to believe in at least some of these disappearances that foul play occurred, that these were stranger on stranger crimes, which despite the recent murder of Eliza Fletcher, we know to be rare. But here is something to think about. Are we sure that Kyle splitting from his friends, or maybe them splitting from him, is the major fact in this case? Why do I ask that? Well, what we must think about is the point that Kyle left the Buckhead Saloon that night, walked out into the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the temperature was about 30 degrees, and the thought never occurred to him that, hey, why am I so cold? Oh yeah, I don't have my coat. In fact, there's nothing to show that he ever attempted to get back into the saloon to get it. Could he have not gone to the employee exit and tried to work on their sympathies so they would get it for him? You'd think so, but there are no stories of something like this at all. In addition, regarding the phone records, although we have certainly had disappearances on Unfound where suspects used the missing person's phone as to make it look like the missing person was still alive. That happened in Eric Franks' disappearance. I think it also happened with Zoe Campos, and some people believe this with Chance Engelbert's as well. Would someone who harmed Kyle have really tried to call Kyle's friends and family as much as seemed to have happened? You be the judge. As for the rumors, I'm certainly open to the idea that Kyle disappeared due to foul play. But I'm not going to think that, and I hope none of you will think so, due to the rumors and unsubstantiated tales that Reggie and I briefly discussed. In fact, the only foul play scenario that makes sense is that the boyfriend of that woman tracked Kyle down and something happened. Or maybe they just went their separate ways. I'll leave the theorizing up to you.
And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.